You're listening to Real Investor Radio with Fuhr and Jack BeVier, where we cover advanced real estate investing topics to help you stay ahead of the curve in your real estate investing business. Hey, welcome back to Real Investor Radio. As the bumper says, we are a podcast for advanced investors, talking about advanced topics. We're going to go deep today. Jack, welcome, my friend.
Great to see you. Good morning, sir.
Well, we have a great guest today, so why don't we just go ahead and jump in with David Moses. David, good to have you on the show, man. Thanks for taking the time today.
Great to be here.
So why don't you give us your, it's better than me giving it. So give us like your paragraph bio, your 15-second elevator pitch bio. You've been in the real estate business a long time, so I'm sure you could go on for a bit. So Tell us all about what you're working on.
So I started investing in 1999, bought my first property from my dad. He had about 120 or so rental properties in Pontiac, Michigan, which is about 30 miles outside of Detroit. I liked the business. I decided to start a property management company. He was nice enough to be my first client. We built the business. I bought a bunch of real estate. Great Recession hit, fell flat on my face, had to give properties back to banks, had to, basically just went to zero. Had no one to support but myself. So it was, I guess in retrospect, a good time for that to happen. If there was ever a good time for that to happen. And then kind of picked up, started buying again, got some, private investors to help me get going, kind of mentor me through getting back on my feet. I got my builder's license. I got a real estate brokerage license. We basically did anything and everything we could to survive through that. And then started buying at a big clip, starting about 2010 to 2014. A portfolio stands about 200 today. We kind of keep it there, buy and sell. We have a community management company that we bought 5 years ago. We manage about 3,000 doors of condo. Property management, we're at about right around 500 doors. We have a direct to seller, marketing, a We Buy Houses company. We've got a construction and maintenance company, and that keeps me busy enough. So
Jack, why don't you jump in and tell us how you met Mr. Moses, and let's get the conversation rolling.
Yeah, I've had the great pleasure of getting to hang out with David for a number of years now. He's in the Real Investor Roundtable Mastermind that we actually had hosted just a week ago here in Baltimore. So we were hanging out at the O's game and got some good dinners, and it was good catching up with him. And David is, as you can already tell, right? He's doing a lot of different things from a business's perspective in terms of, different sources of income, both buying real estate, but also being an operator and being an operator for fees as well. Like, so David, what's the thinking behind like that approach to it? Like, are they complementary businesses just because you're like, hey, if I'm already in the property management business, it helps me afford more people? Is it a diversification of revenue thing, a counter recession thing, or, counter cyclical strategy? How did you think about which businesses you're in?
Yeah, it's kind of all of those things for a lot of different reasons. We're relatively vertically integrated. Most of the businesses do feed off each other, help each other. There are, the community management business is fairly recession proof.
Tell me about that story. Like, so how you got into that? I remember talking with you about that in RIR as you were buying that business, right? Because that's something that you didn't start from scratch. You bought into that business and then grew it, right?
Correct. Yeah, we bought it from an operator. She doesn't want to be a business owner. She bought the business from her mom. She really loved the business and what she was doing, but she didn't want to be an owner dealing with payroll, dealing with employees, dealing with all that stuff. She just wanted to help continue to grow the business and manage the business. And for us, it was really a way to, at the time, increase our footprint, because having communities all around kind of the region, where we had to get people to do services, it helped us get to our maintenance faster, our turnovers faster, grow our employee base, and that was kind of the theory behind it. What it's really become is a way to beat the crap out of banks for cheap money. So
Okay, so let's dig in there, because that's super interesting. And yeah, I remember this now. Like when you bought that business, I remember I was like, because you were saying like, hey, I got an SBA loan that I think I'm going to close on this business with, and like the financing terms are great, and it's going to help me do the strategic thing. So it's, to be clear, it's an HOA management business, right?
Mm-hmm.
You were the HOA manager, providing grass cutting services and like sending people
Turnovers.
letters when the neighbors complain that someone's got a car parked in the front yard or paints their door pink or something. Like
Exactly.
you're the guy who they're hearing from, right?
Yeah, we're the one everybody hates and loves to throw things at.
Yeah. So what's
Jack, my mother lives in a condo. She was telling me the other day how they found a woman who was burying chickens in the backyard, and I was, okay, that would be a good job for David to go handle. How do you handle something like that? Like, yeah,
is that in your standard guideline doc? Yeah, the no chicken graveyard clause.
I've not seen a chicken graveyard clause in bylaws yet. I'm sure it's coming.
coming today.
So you talk us about using the SBA loan to buy that existing business, because I thought that was super interesting. You're like, it's accretive from day one, very low money down. I was like, that's
Yeah,
cool.
we put we wound up actually putting more than we thought we would put down. We wound up putting 75 grand down. We bought the business for $450,000, or 425,000. But at the time, SBA had like, I don't know if it's still this way, but they have two different types of loans. There's like the quick loan, which can go up to 350K, or at the time could, and then there's a more drawn out loan. And the quick loan takes several months, so going with the long drawn out one was just not something we had the appetite for. So we just, we would have been able to probably get away with financing almost 100% of it, had the price been in that, in the right striking range, or if we'd wanted to go through the 6 to 9 month process. Using SBA is, it's quirky. There's really not a lot of logic to the underwriting. They basically, the valuation for the business came in $100,000 less, which was shocking to us because we thought we were buying it at a good deal. But then they said, oh no, don't worry about that. We're just going to give you a working capital loan for the difference. So it was, and they rolled it all into one loan. So the whole thing, I've been around a lot of underwriting and a lot of different types of loans, and I think like that's its own beast. So
So give it, what year was this, and what were the terms of the SBA loan? Curious.
2019. It was a 10-year term. The rate actually floated, which for a long time was phenomenal, and then it was not. But we owe very little on it at this point, so the high interest rate is just like, it's not really that big of a deal.
Sure.
But we were paying at the time in the 5s. Now we're paying in the, I think, high 7s. So it's still pretty reasonable. It's unlimited personal guarantee. But it's a good way to buy a business. I would say it's a very good way to buy an existing business, to start a business, or to grow a business. I can't speak too much to that. But there are some, if you have a business that you're trying to grow, I know SBA has like a quick $25,000 or $50,000 loan that doesn't take a lot of underwriting to get done. I would encourage people to, look at that as an option. And I think it's a great way to grow an operations business. I think if you're, I know people who are using SBA loans to buy trade businesses, like they own a plumbing company, they want to buy an electrical company, they want to buy a cleaning services company, things that complement each other in that space. So, and they're using SBA loans to do it. And there are guys that's kind of specialized in just financing the acquisition of one business to another. And I mean, you can actually, there are ways you can acquire a business and actually take cash out of the acquisition instead of, where you're actually getting 100% financing to buy it and getting capital to grow it. We're looking at another acquisition right now. So SBA is definitely one of the ways we're looking to fund it. But ultimately, I think the type of business community management is, we control where a lot of cash goes to bank. So being able to say, look, here's $10 million of cash. We're going to commit, $1 million.
Because
Yep.
the escrow account.
Because of the escrow account. Yep. And it's not our money, right?
Right.
It's just money that we control because we have to do all the reconciliations. We have to, manage all the transactions. So we tell the, communities where they bank, especially with the operating funds, where the dues go in every month. So we can, what we're in the middle of doing is basically going to a few different banks and saying, look, we're going to buy this business. This will be under $1 million to buy the business. But we're going to commit to bringing $1 million of cash to your bank. So to the bank, it's just, do they trust me? Because they don't need the cash to lend it to us. And they wouldn't be able to lend it to anybody else unless I brought it to them. So it becomes a pretty simple equation for them. It's just, do they trust me that we're going to, not fall flat on our face?
But that's like a huge deal from the bank's perspective, right? That you're able to show up like you're just the community association is not a very big borrower from the bank's balance sheet point of view, but it becomes a humongous depositor, right? So they're like loan to deposit ratio on the relationship with David Moses is like a tremendous one, right? Like you're an awesome customer. You're bringing tons of deposits and borrowing some money too. Like that's just best case scenario.
Yep. And we're not encumbering the money that we bring to them.
Right.
But that's okay because, it's available for them to lend. So we wind up getting around a lot of, hey, our real estate, single family bucket is full. Like, I don't care. I don't care.
My deposits are going down the street where your single family bucket isn't full anymore, huh?
Yeah.
Sure it's full. Maybe, top it up a little bit, just a little top up.
Yeah. So, I don't know from the regulatory side. I have a shout out to Fred Lewis for, kind of coming up with the idea of exactly how we leverage that cash when we go to the banks and he's the one who taught me about credit spreads. Where bank basically, if they've got cash, they've got to earn money on their money. Right now, credit spreads are in the low 2s, and I'm bringing them the cash and saying I want to borrow it at a 3.5 or a 4 spread. That's very enticing for them. And so, 80% financing, I'm paying in the, I'm typically paying in the low to mid 6s. So they do have, so some of the cash, they don't pay, the bank doesn't have to pay the deposit or anything because it's DDA accounts. And then some of the cash they have to pay, interest on. So it blends out, and then we pay a credit spread on top of that and borrow money and buy real estate.
Yeah, until you told me about you buying this community association idea, it never really occurred to me. I was like, why? Like I have absolutely no
Another
interest in
headache.
that whatsoever. Like that sounds like crazy. And I'm like, and you're like, well, I'm 100% financing it with cheap government money. It's accretive to my overall operation because I've out of the gates got a reason to be in those locations. And so it's making my property management operations more efficient. And by the way, I'm all of a sudden a big swinging dick at my bank relationships because I'm, coming with millions of dollars of escrow accounts. And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess there is some value there. That sounds like a pretty good idea.
Wait a minute.
From a strategic point of view.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And I think I think the growth is there. So from one standpoint, you have, all the storms happening in Florida. You've got issues happening all around the country with weather and whatnot. And condo associations are being targeted now from a regulatory standpoint to actually take their reserves and increase them, requiring to do reserve studies. So I think the business only gets sexier over time.
Right.
So we're looking for other community management companies to buy. We're looking to, aggressively grow that business, because at some point it'll be big enough to just, where we'll be a target, for private equity, to come and make an acquisition.
Is that like what are the day-to-day operations of that business look like? Is there like particular community association software that specializes in those kinds of issues, or are you using regular property management software adapted for this
So
use case?
So there are quite a few software packages that are specific to the space. We are actually switching from an older one called Village Management Software, which is really still like VPN dial-in to a server, and switching to a company called Sync. The advantage for us is that Sync has their own lockbox. So what becomes very interesting is they all mail all these co-owners at these associations will now mail the payment to a lockbox in Lansing, Michigan, and they have lockboxes all over the country. And from a software perspective, they'll process the payment, but then on the back end, we can, with a flick of a switch, decide where we want that cash to go in terms of a bank. So we can say, okay, association, A, you're gonna have bank accounts at these 3 banks, right? And depending on what's most advantageous for us, they don't care, because these are DDA accounts, not making any deposit, any
Material
return on them, and they're they're protected from a FDIC standpoint, so they don't care, and we'll just basically use that tool on the back end to decide, okay, we're going to put $1 million here, we're going to put $500,000 in this bank. And so the software, on top of being kind of the way you hook new communities in, that's really your interface with them. It's not like a tenant where you have to deal with the interior of the unit. You're really just dealing with, are they paying their dues, and are they violating, various bylaws,
Covenants, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a, they really interact with us through the software. Most of the vast majority of our co-owners, that's really their only impression of us. And with the board members who are actually, who are, running their board meetings each month, how snazzy their reports look and how they're able to navigate through that becomes super important. But AppFolio's got into the space too, and AppFolio is, like AppFolio does, they're going full bore into it, and the management company we're looking to acquire right now uses AppFolio as their backbone. So
what are the synergies that you've found from the operations perspective of being in the community association business, as well as being in the property management, traditional property management business? And then I guess corollary to that, have you found being in the community association business helped you find any deals, or is it just about the property management synergies as well as the banking strategy?
So far, it's just, we have had, we're a rental, we have a, kind of a bad rental in a community where we come in and we say, look, we can manage this for you. But that's kind of few and far between. Really, maintenance is a big, we fell flat on our faces right out of the gate. We basically jumped in and said, okay, we can take this work order, we can take that work order. But the mentality of a repair person going to a rental and making a repair is different. The process is different, the quality is different. Even how you are going to go about fixing something is different. So we really pooped the bed on that right out of the gate. But going and basically saying, okay, well, you got a railing here on this side, this railing is falling over on the other side of the porch. Property management, we go out there, we replace the one railing that's broken, we, paint it to match, and we're good. In community management, the whole thing gets replaced. Probably the overhang above gets replaced. Everything needs to look, new and perfect, or you're going to have people screaming and yelling. So it is a different approach, and that was difficult to wrap our minds around. So instead, we started hiring. What we've gone to now is more of like a fractional maintenance technician. So it's like you're a community of 50 doors or 75 doors or 100 doors, and you don't need a full-time maintenance person on staff, but it might make sense for you to have someone come one day a week. So we would basically have one maintenance guy who he goes here on this day, there on that day, so on and so forth. But they're only at communities, so they have, they understand what the goal is, and what to solve. So we've seen some synergies on that side. Other than that, it's really banking. We'll probably jump in on brokerage a little bit more once the market kind of loosens up a little bit. Try to maybe brand our own, community condo expert, listing service, where, hey, we'll list your condo. There are some nuances to listing and selling condos that are a little different than your single family homes. So, having 3,000, hopefully soon 6,000 captive, eyeballs, looking at us to say, hey, we've kind of figured this out. Just a minor adaptation to our existing brokerage business, and we can kind of customize it for that space.
What's the buy box? I mean, there's a lot of communities out there, right? And so what's the buy box for a typical community? Is there, are you looking at 55 and older? Are you looking at certain age groups of communities? What won't you buy? What will you buy?
So what we want are newer communities. So you're looking for things that were built, things that were built in our market after 80s and later, would be good targets for us. So if a community management company manages 2,000 doors and it's all, kind of high-rise buildings from the 30s and 40s, that's tough for us. That's elevators going out all the time. That's, neighbors on top of each other, listening to each other, cook and yell at their spouses and beat their children. Like it's just not fun. But
the bathroom above you leaking,
exactly. And then you have, 4 people to deal with. So those aren't, we're looking for, management companies that manage, in areas where either the builder who built it, really, really knew what they were doing, or it's just new enough where, the cities were on top of it, making sure that it was built correctly. Because you wind up getting blamed for everything as the manager, as just like in property management, but in community management, the fewer the problems you have in that end, the better. So that's what we're looking for, the age of the buildings. It's actually better to have younger residents because they're just more apt to use your technology to, call in work orders, to pay their dues, to, all the things that the interaction becomes easier with text and so forth. The older folks are, they're calling you and staying on the phone with you for a half hour to talk about this and that. It eats up the time, especially like, and Jack, I know you use Culture Index, so it's like, I would say the best community manager is really like a socializer, right? It's somebody who can just connect with the person. When you have older folks calling in, that can take time. We have a little timer on the desk, on the desks of these people, just like, hey, 2 minutes, that's it.
You do not want to call from my 82-year-old mother. I'll tell you that right now. Keep you on the phone all day.
They also want to come in, like they have bank bill pay, they have a checking account, but they want to come in and they want to deliver their payment. So we love our older folks, and respect them and thank them for everything that they've done for us.
So you mentioned the deal that you got on the first purchase, and Do you find that it's that easy these days, or has the market for buying these companies become way more competitive?
I think it is very competitive. We're probably, we were paying, 1 times revenue. Now we're making offers at a 1.5 times revenue, maybe, even approaching 1.7. It really depends. Are they profitable or not? If they're not profitable, then, you can get it more on the cheaper side of things. But, we've only struck once, and we're looking very close to striking a second time, but we have been out there talking to a bunch of people. But it's really that the avatar is
Yeah, I was going
someone
to
who
ask.
built this business. They are looking for an exit at some point. They can't be like ready to pull the ripcord, because they're going to sell the big guys, because they don't need them, and the big guys are going to pay a little bit less because they have their systems together, what percentage of the business they're going to keep over what period of time. For us, we really want to keep that person for at least 3 to 5 years. Let them continue to grow the business, let them stay there so that the existing clients know, all the faces aren't changing. Really all we're going to change is things on the back end. That's the other part of the business, is that you're really buying the community managers. You're really,
Mm.
that's the relationship. You can create some efficiencies on the back end, and you can give support to community managers to increase the number of units that they manage. But really, it's they're the backbone of the business, and you have the variables that change are community manager and board, right? And as long as you have some continuity on the boards, to maintain the relations with the community manager, they can navigate those politics and keep the business.
So are you out there doing the due diligence on, boots on the ground type thing with these purchases, or is this something that you can generally do remote? I mean, do you want to go out and see the properties, meet the managers?
No, we don't need to. We definitely want to meet the managers, but that's very tricky with these things. It's almost like you got to be really far down the road. You kind of have to rely on, Google reviews, and, to try to, piece out, okay, which managers really aren't loved, which ones are. That's kind of tricky. They don't want to let any of their people know that this is happening until it's basically a done deal.
Sure.
And so that becomes tricky to navigate.
So you mentioned that you're in the property management business, not only for your portfolio but also for third parties. Why, and how do you make that work?
There's a slight bias to Jack's question there. It was almost undiscernible, but
I can't give you a really good answer as to why. We've always done it. We started that way. We're kind of built that way. But if you ask me 5 years from now, is it our goal to continue to have a robust third-party management program? I would say no. It's something that with clients who view us as a convenience or a way to kind of take care of their very passive investments, we're very happy with those relationships. The people who used to live in the house, that it's like they have an emotional attachment to it. People who rely on this income to make their own, expenses each month. Those are just difficult scenarios that make it very. It's a frustrating business. It's also just a very inefficient business because, half our job is doing our job, and the other half of the job is justifying why we did what we did.
Yeah.
It becomes,
So
horribly inefficient.
What's your culture there with respect to prospective new owners and even existing owners? Like, are you guys like a, hey, I'm the expert, leave me alone kind of thing? And like, how do you do fee? There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, right? Like in terms of making it work. And I think everyone's going to agree that like the the one owner who owns or the owner who owns a single rental property who doesn't know anything about the business, who is also like needs the money. That's like kind of worst case scenario from a client perspective. So like, where do you guys draw the line in terms of your fees, how you charge those fees, and then your kind of like attitude towards the customer or relationship with the customer? How does that the property management owner?
Yeah,
How does
yeah. I
that?
mean, the first thing is just patience. The ideal situation is even if you have a newbie investor, if they own it free and clear, it's going to be okay. In the vast majority of cases, it's going to be fine. People borrowing 70, 75, 80%, I would guess that in most markets, that just doesn't cash flow for 5 years. And I think that anybody who thinks it does, like, is just either kidding themselves or they are, hoping for lightning to strike. I just
Yeah.
don't, the idea, kind
Sorry.
of the way we've been kind of encouraging people to go about investing where they're finding their own deals and we're just managing them is to kind of look at it like you're going to acquire, you're going to renovate, you're going to rent it out, get to long-term capital gains, right? And then after that first tenant, if that first tenant lasts 5 years, wonderful, right? You're going to be making money, earlier than 5 years. If that first tenant lasts, 18 months, sell that property. You've just turned it over. You've just renovated it. It's in good shape. As long as the market is, like it is now, sell it. Move into something else. If you don't want to pay the long-term capital gains tax, fine. Move yourself into a 1031 and just, kind of keep it rolling. Because those are the things, those large turnovers, if you're trying to build a portfolio, turnover is going to kill you until you get to a, 100 doors plus. It's just you're going to give away all of your income. If you have 5 doors, you have one big turnover, you're going to give away your income for 18 months on your whole portfolio. Because it's just these things don't, they don't cash flow. Not if you're borrowing money. So we discourage. We're not out there looking for business. I also tell my people, when people come to me and say, "Hey, I want you to manage my property," the first thing I ask them is, do you know a handyman? Right? Because if you know a handyman and you can pay that handyman to fix that thing, he's going to charge you less than I'm going to charge you. And not just because I've got a lot of demand for my services. It's also because I've got payroll taxes to pay. I've got insurance to keep. I've got trucks. I've got all the overhead that I've got. And there's, at cost, I can't do it cheaper than you could do it if you know a guy in a truck.
Yeah.
So that and what we try to do really well. The battle I think we win is marketing new properties, screening tenants. I think those things are going to be, doing collections. I think those things, a professional property manager is always going to, just far outperform and outlast anybody who thinks they can do it on their own.
Yeah.
Jack, it's been a long time since you and I talked about third-party management at Dominion Properties, the management company. Are you guys still managing third-party?
Yeah. We are. So just like David, got our butts kicked in the downturn, and we're just looking for ways to make revenue in 2008, 9, 10. And so we started selling turnkey rentals because at the time the cap, what was awesome was the cap rates, right? Because the prices were super low and the rents hadn't really moved down much. And so we started selling turnkey rentals. We probably sold, I don't know, 150 or so in a couple year period. And we, as part of that sale, because we were kind of definitionally looking for folks who were, doctor, lawyer, dentist type, they weren't in the business. And so they wanted third-party property management. So we managed those, and we had done the renovations. So, we knew that there was a certain level of
Quality.
in the renovation. And we've kept that third party property management portfolio, but we really haven't taken anybody on that we didn't do the renovations and sell the turnkey rental ourselves. We haven't sold turnkeys in many, many years, so we don't have any new clients to speak of. And some of our owners have, over the years, just decided to sell. Some are still just, collecting the check, and they're thrilled because everything's, gone up and to the right. So
we haven't talked about that since probably 2016, Jack, and that was your sort of the story you gave me back then of why and how you would bring on a third party owner. And I thought the brilliance of the whole story back then was, hey, look, we know how to renovate these things so they're bulletproof. We know that they're probably going to be, we'll place a decent tenant. And, Jack, we've met property managers all over town here that'll take on pretty much anyone. And the anyone's become, I'm just handing this thing over, let them handle the tenants and toilets, and I don't want to get any phone calls. And that's never the case, as both of you know. So, yeah, I love the idea of like, give me a bulletproof house, we'll put a great tenant in for you, and hopefully that'll perform much better than the guy who's doing the mom and pop himself and patch and paint on a place.
Yeah, I mean, the turnkey rental business, right, has necessarily one of the services that the turnkey rental sellers are selling is property management.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're doing it themselves. I think, frankly, as a necessity, right? They build a property management company because they need to in order to sell more turnkey rentals. On rare occasion, I've seen where there's a third party property manager that the turnkey rental guy is like teeing up. But just from our own experience, I've had such a hard time making any money in that business. Like, I know I know that company doesn't make money for myself, right? When I manage it for our own rental properties. And I was charging myself 8% plus 1 month leasing fee, plus a renewal fee after 2 years. No markup on maintenance though. And that didn't make any money. That made no money. I lost a little bit of money doing that. So like on a total percentage of revenue basis, like I think the third, and I'm talking about like $1,500 rents here, not $3,000 rents, but like $1,500 rents. I think it costs, at least in Baltimore or at least in Maryland, I think it costs 12 to 14% of revenue, maybe probably like 12, 13% of revenue to run property management well. So like when I see third party managers who are charging that or less, I'm like, either you're aware of something that I'm just completely unaware of, and or you started it with Filipino VAs from day one and you've cracked that code, or you're just a shitty property manager. And I think that most often it's the latter.
Door number 3.
And so, but also like it doesn't, and I also think it's like it's a penny wise, pound foolish thing to like be cheap with your property manager, right? To try to like, when they tell you it's 10% of rent plus 1 month's leasing fee, plus we charge a 10% handling fee on maintenance. I'm like, yeah, like, yes, like that's gotta be it. Like the other, like, and trying to negotiate with them is just such a cutting your nose off to spite your face, like approach to business. That I'm like, they're just gonna you're forcing them to just be like, open up the yellow pages, point at plumber, and like call plumber, and plumber charges you $350 for a trip fee, right? Like you're forcing them to not try, right? To spend no energy in saving your NOI. So like,
and this is as good as it gets. The last 10 years of market,
yeah,
that's as good as it gets.
Absolutely.
It's not going to get better than that. So now add in, okay, rents are plateauing, costs are going up, revenue's not going up. People have bought, people are, upside down or, basically treading water. That business doesn't get better from here. It's like all of the things you mentioned, and then add a market that isn't
getting any better. Yeah.
Running like a freight train. I mean,
if you bought your house prior to 2020, you've benefited from significant rent increases, and that's great. And that's awesome, right? And those rents haven't really come down. They're starting to come down in certain spots, but they haven't, nationwide, they haven't come down much. And so those folks may be okay. But I don't know, if you bought if you're, the stuff that you bought in the past couple of years though, and then levered up, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think that's tough, right? That stuff's not going to cash flow. It's just not going to cash flow. I can't see how that's the case. If you put any kind of debt on it, sorry, like, unless you bought it free and clear, obviously, or put very low levels of debt, like 50% LTV levels of debt on it.
It's a great, if you're full time in the business from a tax perspective, and if you have an operating business that earns, ordinary income, I think it's a great strategy to, I think it's a great strategy to avoid paying a lot of taxes.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing deals where basically we bought them, we cost segged them, we took the bonus depreciation, and then sold them 1031 into something else and did the cost seg again.
Mm-hmm.
So you're basically taking an already low basis and now you're cost segging again and getting it, taking advantage of another, big hit. And I think that's a good reason to own houses and continue to buy.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. There's the cash flow. If you're buying something now and you're using leverage, unless it's very, very, very low leverage, it's probably a loser from a cash flow perspective.
David, I have a question for you. Have you how much has the third party property management business been a source of deals? I'm always focused on source of deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because I have this thesis, I want to get your take on it. And Craig,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've mentioned this in the podcast before.
Mm.
Interrupt me if we have. But so the idea that, I think that folks who bought post 2022 and then put leverage, put and maxed out leverage, whatever they could do, whatever was available at the time. I don't think that those deals are going to cash flow in the long term. I think that they might be cash flowing, like they might be covering the mortgage.
Yeah, a couple $100 a month.
Yeah, on a monthly basis. But as David alluded to 20 minutes ago, when you get to that first turnover, there wasn't, unless you're cash flowing $400-$500 a month, there's not, and not spending it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then not spending it. There's no money left in the reserve account to pay for the $5,000-$10,000 turnover that you have in a single family house. And that's the point where if these folks don't have other sources of income or other savings, that's when they'll have a problem, right? The property will turn over. The property manager will go do an estimate and say, hey, it's going to be $8,000. Please, send this over $8,000 and we'll get the property turned over for you. And they'll be like, yo, I don't got it.
Yeah.
And, the owner will be like, I don't got it. And the property manager, it'll just sit there vacant, right? So the property managers will be the first one, if I'm right.
Yep.
The property managers will be the first ones to see this because they'll start to stack vacants, right? Like owners of 10 properties will have one vacant at any given time because that's a typical vacancy rate or whatever in that market. And then they'll get to a turnover and they'll be like, I don't have the cash flow for it. Just leave that one vacant for a month and take it out of next month's net income payment. And then they'll do that, right? And that'll work. And then another one will go vacant. But then the next month after that, there won't be enough to pay for that turnover. And so they'll just leave that one to the side, just keep paying the utility bills and the property taxes, but we're going to leave that vacant until the cash flow from the rest can pay for that turnover. But you're then eroding the top line, right? As you take more and more units offline, you're just eroding the top line until there's not enough money to make the mortgage payment, right? Because you've now got 30% structural vacancy, which is only 3 houses, if you own 10,
Yeah.
But at 30% structural vacancy, the Excel spreadsheet it is definitely not covering the mortgage. And that's when they'll panic and be like, I'm done. I don't know what to do. I'm done. I've got 3 vacants out of my 10, I've got 30% structural vacancy in my portfolio. And I can't take money out of my savings to keep making these mortgage payments. And so they'll build up like that, right? And the property manager will see it coming, right? Because they're the ones who will be told, hey, yeah, just set that one to the side, And if you're self-managing, well, then you'll know it but you really, you'll have a story, right? You'll be telling yourself a story for a while as to how a couple more months, it was just a bad run of luck there, and a couple more months of cash flow, I'll get these back online and get my vacancy, my my occupancy rate back up. But it'll never happen, right? And that'll take a year, 18 months to play out, right? That'll take maybe a couple years for that to play out.
Jack's whole
Until
thesis, by the way, David, is my memoir from 2010. Like he's like, this is the Craig Fuhr story of 2010 right here. Yeah, yeah, man. He must have read my computer notes at some point.
So
yeah, man. So what's your take on that? Is the property manager the first to know? Is that the first buying opportunity that you see?
So from a property management perspective, we would generally not allow like a small investor with a few houses to kind of have to go through that. If it, and it's not benevolence. We're making money doing it. We're marking up the turnover significantly, and we're saying, look, we're going to do this turnover for you, and we're going to take it out of future rents. And that has been, where we run into issues with stacked vacancy is really more people who are doing it themselves and just don't have time to actually, do the turnover. But people who lack the funds, we're stepping in and we're doing it. And, because, ultimately it's money out of our pocket too. And it's just as difficult. It's just as difficult to manage a vacant property, if not more, than it is to manage an occupied property. And in many cases, we're not making any money doing it. So
I wonder, I just wonder at what point the owner, when you tell them hey, this is what we're doing here. Like, we're getting this thing back on the rent roll, and they call you and they're like, no, I need that check to make the mortgage payment, right? Like, when you get that call, right? When you start getting, you get 2 of those calls in the same month, let me know.
Well, no, those are interesting situations.
There's your sign.
The other thing right now, it's like, why is there no foreclosure inventory coming? And I would say that the primary reason that there is very little foreclosure inventory is because the market is basically telling them, hey, you get a reward, for being forced to sell. Hey, you're forced to sell, and oh, by the way, the market's going to give you great money. And so I think that's going to be the exit. That's going to be the decision. It's like, okay, we design all of our leases to end in the warm months in Michigan. That's just, it makes sense. So vacancy is always occurring either from an eviction, which is rare, or from a situation where, somebody moved out in accordance with their lease. And if they moved out in accordance with their lease, okay, you don't want to do the turnover. You don't want us to turn this over. You're not going to be able to carry it, while the rent pays us back. Fine. Let's put it on the market, get you some cash. We take a commission, and they're happy. We have bought from our owners before, but that was really, investors who felt like, okay, I think the market's hit a relative peak. I'll take, a few cents off to sell, 5 or 10 at a time. And we've done very, very well on those. But at the time it was like, like it wasn't an exciting purchase. I didn't feel like we were getting a great deal, but those, wound up being great deals.
Hey, let's talk a conversation that we had at RIR. I wanted to bring that here in terms of, so on the property management, you led a conversation. We try to have a very informal environment where we've got members who are leading topics on subjects that they're the experts on, or and we've also got some new member presentations during the mastermind, and that's super helpful for everyone because we get to know the folks that are coming to the business, and everyone's always got if you're doing enough volume, everyone's got some genius zone where the rest of the room really learns off of that. So that's a big part of what I get out of RIR. And David led a discussion on the property management side about your property management tech stack and what softwares you're using, how those should work together, and this is a pain point for me because we got a lot of legacy systems, and I'm in the category of like, it's good enough. And I know it's not elegant. Like, I know ours isn't elegant and that offends my sensibilities, but it's also like, I make a business decision at the end of the day and it's okay. But David, I thought you had some really interesting insights on how you guys have thought about this and what you think that the tech stack needs to be on a going forward basis to run a profitable third party property management company, right? Because as we've mentioned, it's already a low margin business. So having a crappy old legacy tech stack is not, is probably not the secret sauce to running a profitable property management business. So talk to me about that idea.
Jack, do you want to continue to roll, or should we roll into a new episode here?
Let's finish this conversation, and then we'll roll into an episode, because I definitely want to spend some time talking to David about his acquisitions right now, and also there's some infill new construction that he's done that's really interesting on the modular side.
Right,
he's got more experience than anyone else that I've talked to.
So on the in the world of property management tech, I want to use the same disclaimer I used at RIR. This hasn't worked yet. I kind of my approach to, kind of how I want to go forward. I haven't proved this out to be able to say, yes, it works this way. But we're taking a Frankenstein approach. What we're basically doing is we're picking a CRM. We picked Zoho. You can pick Salesforce. You can pick, I think many of them are very, very good. Unlimited customizability is really what you're looking for in a good CRM. And that becomes our central hub. And then we basically have thrown our hands up and said, we're never going to be the best at maintenance coordination. We're never going to be the best at showing coordination. We're never going to be the best at whatever it is that you fill in that some software company that's out there at IMN conferences and, various other conferences, saying, hey, look what we figured out. For inspections or whatever, we're just going to say, like, we want a system that can be a central hub that we can plug in those external, we do this best programs to save our time, to save us money. Software is generally cheap, definitely cheaper than people, even cheaper than people in the Philippines and South America. So it's figure out a way where we're using best in class whatever and plug it into our hub so that our hub can then translate it and communicate it to our property management software and to other softwares in the tech stack that need that data. So you're not, forced into duplicate entry and, error, basically human error. So that's kind of our approach. That's what we have been, executing.
I'm a big fan of that idea. It's the approach that we took in building out the lending company software side of things. We 4 years ago just said screw it, and we're going to invest in Salesforce. And so Salesforce is our backbone. That's the word that I use for it. And exactly what you said, the same thesis that you said, like, hey, there's going to be apps that do the individual components of our business much better than anything that I'm going to create custom for myself. So, the point is not to build Salesforce from scratch internally. It's to use it as a backbone that we can tap into the best in class app software or software providers. And we chose Salesforce because from a scalability point of view, we thought that made sense. And the app, their app environment, the developer environment is probably the most robust, right? Now it's also one of them. It's very expensive, right? So that's the offset. And unless you're going to do like 6,000 units, like JWB in Jacksonville built their property management backbone on Salesforce, but they're managing 6,000 units. So, they had good reason to need that level of scale. But I think that makes a ton of sense to me. And also, I mentioned this at RAR. I think I envision this world in the future. I think with ChatGPT 4.0, that was like a really kind of tide shift in terms of the new capabilities that you can get out of 4.0 right now. Is really kind of eye opening for me. I think that's the first version it's going to lead to noticeable productivity gains
Mhm.
for kind of white collar labor. And I don't think we're going to read documents anymore. I don't think humans are going to read documents anymore. I think we're going to drag and drop it into ChatGPT 4.0 or whatever the next version is, and say, abstract this lease for me and label these certain definitions. The base rent, incremental rent, utility reimbursement, who pays for water, all that stuff, names of folks, and then ChatGPT will just label that data based off of, because it extracts it from your standard lease, and then APIs it into your CRM, and that automatic. And since it's connected to all the apps, the lease automatic or whatever, the move-in package automatically gets created, and the welcome package automatically gets created, and the tenants are set up in the system and all that jazz, right? That just happens because you've connected the backbone to these best-in-class apps. And so there's no data entry. It's just drag source document into ChatGPT APIs to your backbone, which sends it out to the apps that your customers are going to use. And it should be very minimal from like a labor point of view, from a property management labor point of view. And I think that idea, though I've never seen what I just described, just like you just said, right? I haven't seen that happen, right? Like I'm working on a version of that idea in different parts of our business right now, but I'm just working on it because the ChatGPT 4.0 just came out, right? And I think that's an interesting, but I think that your vision of that backbone talking to apps is like the right one. Because it enables because it's necessary to add the AI aspect to the workflow.
That data, the data component you're talking about is it not only enables you to quickly get data from whatever your data source is, whether it's a document or whatever. It also gives you the advantage of being able to mine that data and analyze that data later. So having a bunch of different data points allows you to ask questions and get real answers. Where if you aren't even collecting the data to begin with because you're using manual labor to do it, then you don't have, you're immediately at a disadvantage. As an example, it's like what we are, the question we try to answer with property management from a leasing standpoint is who is going to stay the longest, right? I want to predict the tenant that's going to last 5+ years, right? And we don't collect enough data. We haven't collected enough data over the past 10 years to really accurately, we're kind of guessing based on how long they stayed at their last place and why they're leaving, but there's really, I think that will get worlds better. And we'll be able to use other people's data and our own data to try to answer that question and focus in on those tenants that are going to be winners. Like vacancy is, that's it. I mean, vacancy and turnover, vacancy is not expensive. Turnover is expensive. But you don't have to do one if you don't have the other. So being able to predict who is going to, who's going to stay there is just, that's gold.
Do you have a sense of the data that you're not collecting right now that you wish you would be, like to avatar that perfect tenant out?
So I think what it is just digging into, like, there are thousands and thousands of data points out there.
Sure.
We use it when we buy houses, when we buy a list, a predictive list from Audentic or from,
I was just about to mention, yeah.
Right. And I think that, the idea is to, when someone moves, right, then it's doing a postmortem and saying, okay, what does that person's life look like
Yes.
Over the past and then using all those data points, engaging with those types of companies to use the data they probably already have, that it's pretty much free. I mean, the data doesn't cost anything. It's really just the manipulating of it and the mining, basically the processing of it, and engage with those companies and say, you guys figure this out. You guys have already figured out how to predict for me with a remarkable amount of better accuracy than me, who it makes sense for me to send a mail piece to ask them to sell their house, because you've kind of figured out this is what the avatar of a seller who's willing to sell at a discount to an investor looks like. So you're more likely to get good hits if you aim for these people. And it's not credit scores, right? It's not income. Those things are, to be honest, those things, I think they fade into the background in terms of really being good predictors. Obviously, if somebody can't pay the rent, then it's going to be very costly and they're not going to stay, but that's just such a small subset of people to begin with that are going to go through an eviction. I think it's just kind of a waste of time to focus on them. You really have to focus on, regardless of reason, they're going to be here 10 years from now. They're still going to be in this unit renting. And so it's really, I think that's what it is. I don't think it's really data that we're, I think it's basically data that is out there combined with the data that we're collecting so that we can change our practices. Like we can feed it. This is when these places went vacant. Like this is when we leased it out, right? Show me, people who leased in March, are they, what's the average tenancy of a person who leases a property in March versus somebody who leases a property in, I would guess, I would wager that the people who are moving in, right before school, a couple months before school starts. So basically like that end of summer, beginning of fall, those people are more likely to move when the weather gets nice than somebody like once you've gone through a winter move, like, and you've felt that pain. I feel like that's, maybe a better predictor of what, but I don't know.
Or
and
perhaps
we won't know.
not. I mean, if I move into a place in March because I have a kid who's going to the better school down the street, maybe I'm now a 4 or 6 year tenant because I want my kid to stay in that school, right?
And you can predict that, right? Because I know how old your kids are, right? So I can predict how long your tenancy is going to be just by looking at their ages.
Jack, Dominion, you guys boast a pretty high occupancy rate and a fairly long tenancy rate, as I recall. How does this hit you? What are you thinking about? Love the whole idea of trying to predict the better tenant. I mean, if someone cracks that nut, that's a sellable nut, right?
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons we work a lot with the housing choice voucher program, regardless of location. And the main reason we made that business decision to, we of course, for fair housing, we review all applications equally, but we advertise on places like advertise our houses on places like GoSection8.com because we like voucher tenants. The reason we like voucher tenants is that we think the stigma is overdone, and we get very long tenancy duration and very low credit loss. Like, we file a lot of rent court, but we evict very little. And yeah, so like cracking the nut of tenancy duration, I agree. It's a laudable goal. We've used the voucher holders as like, that's just like kind of a hack for tenancy duration, right? Like those folks don't move that often. They don't want to, they don't have the money to move that often. So like you give them a great product. And we end up getting above average tenancy duration.
And that's it's an interesting, because we just started kind of, expanding, housing choice vouchers tend to, in our market, they trail, rent trends. So they're always, always paying last year's rent or whatever. So what what we're looking at is, hey, it's a big pain in the butt to get somebody in there, right? I can get a market rate tenant in there very quickly.
Yeah.
It's a big pain in the butt to get,
It
you
is.
know, but the flip side of that coin isn't that also a disincentive for the tenant
Oh
to
man,
leave, right?
we have a list of I think there are currently 40 people who have told us that they're thinking about moving, because we survey that a lot. But we get 10 turnovers every month. Like that's it. That's all we get.
Mhm.
And it's, yeah, because there's friction on both sides of it, right? Like oh, you want to, you're interested in moving? Cool. You're in good standing. Rent's current. Love you. Do you want to stay at one? Do you want to come to one of our houses? That's our first base. But then it is a theme in the leasing office that folks will go out into the market, look to see what's available. Even if they find a place that the house doesn't pass the pre-contract inspection, and fails the pre-contract inspection twice, and 90 days later that landlord gives up and says, like, I can't navigate this process, like, I'm sorry, I have to go another direction. And they come back and they're like, I guess I'm staying, like, can you paint my repaint my bedroom? And we're like, of course, absolutely. Yeah, so that's a thing. There's friction on both sides of it.
Yeah, and it's really, I don't know if there is an easier button in terms of expanding your average tenancy length than accepting, Section 8 housing choice vouchers. But what else is there? Like, I think, one thing we stay away from are, just predictable one and dones, people who are overqualified, people just moving to the area, things like that, though, they're least, if they don't know the area, they're least likely to pick where they actually ultimately want to be. So, things like that.
We have we have a joke, like if someone's moving from out of town and they're moving to a tougher part of town, like a tougher location, we're like, nah, it's not going to work out. They're gonna if you grew up in that neighborhood and mom lives across the street, all right, cool.
Yeah.
There's actually a high likelihood you're going to stay there for a long time,
For sure.
right? But if you're from New York and you're moving to a tougher part of town, I'm like, maybe we're going to get 4 months before they're calling the office just freaking out, that this isn't what they expected.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's a thing.
Hey, David, can you give an example of some product that you've bolted on to Zoho that has made your property management more efficient?
So from I would say one of the exciting ones we're working on right now, it's going to sound super boring, but
we love boring.
We're using a software called Doc Parser, which is probably irrelevant already, but it won't be. It's not yet. The like ChatGPT 4.0 is not quite there to read and write to databases super reliably. So Doc Parser basically just you put in a PDF of essentially a form document like a water bill. For us, it's water bills because water bills are a big pain in the butt. They get attached to the taxes in Michigan. If the tenant doesn't pay them, it's almost impossible to get it into the tenant's responsibility. So we're running hundreds of water bills through, where we get them emailed, we pop them in a folder, Doc Parser reads them and sends data into Zoho. And then Zoho right now, all it's doing is saying, hey, this tenant's past due on their water, right? But very shortly it will say, hey, this tenant's past due on their water. Hey, tenant, you're past due on your water. We're adding this fee to your ledger. We're adding the water bill to your ledger. Going into our property management software, cutting the check and putting the fee on their ledger and putting the water bill on their ledger. So it's all an automated process that, if it saves 2 hours a month or 3 hours a month, I mean, it probably isn't going to cost us more than, $300-400 to implement.
Yeah.
So it's little things like that, and then we can kind of copy paste that same functionality because we get a document and something has to happen, right? So once you've kind of figured out who has to be notified, what has to happen, then it's just kind of plug and play. Okay, we're going to take this template for water bills. Now we're going to apply it to, we got a violation from the city for grass cutting, right? So those types of things, that's one I think we're using that simple but useful. Property meld is one that we've used for property maintenance. We're kind of digging into how we can make that whole process automated in terms of paying our people, because if they use meld to interact with the tenant to schedule the work order, they go out, they perform the work, they upload their bill, that bill goes into our system.
Yeah. It's a lot of touches.
They get paid. It gets, there's so many touches when it comes to maintenance. So by kind of eliminating a lot of that, putting it a lot on the tenant and a lot on the technician to interact with the software to tell us what we need to know, then it can, the accounting part of it can be automated and taken care of. Notification to the owner can be taken care of. I really want my accounting people to focus on budgets, like that's manage expectations. Like this is what is probably going to happen with your portfolio over the next year. So when somebody calls and says, I'm bitching about an expense, it's like, okay, you're at, 60, it's July, you're at 60% of your budget for maintenance. I think we're still going to be okay, but I'll keep an eye on it. And, next time a maintenance thing comes up, I'll see if I can get a better deal for you if it's going to, breach that limit. And they're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm still okay.
Yeah, Jack and I, Jack does a call with most of the LOs and some other folks at Dominion Financial once a week. Jack, yeah,
mm-hmm.
And we were having a discussion the other day about AI and sort of how it's sort of the fourth turning of technology and how it should make us all more productive. And we don't talk about it much, but I'm a loan officer here with the company. And one of the things that we have to do that is just mind-boggling is, we have all these note buyers, and every one of those note buyers has got guidelines, and those guidelines change, and they're usually documents that no one really wants to read or memorize. And so what we've done is, what one of our managers has done here is really loaded up all of those documents into ChatGPT. And so now I can query any note buyer on, hey, what's the max LTV I can go here? Or if I've got a 5-unit property with a person with a 680 credit score, what can we do? And it's instantaneous across all note buyers. And it's brilliant. One of the things that we do often here is underwrite condos. And part of that is we have to find out whether or not the condo is warrantable or non-warrantable, right?
And there's different definitions of non-warrantable between different note buyers. It's mind-numbing.
Oh, it is. But
I think between different agencies, I think even Fannie and Freddie have slightly different
So if you standardize on the Fannie form for the condo questionnaire, now that questionnaire can be loaded into Chat, and you can get out an instantaneous result on whether or not the condo is warrantable or not for that particular note buyer. And that's the time that saves, Jack. I mean, it's got to be at least an hour and a half. Yeah, and we can get 10 calls in an hour and a half here, So,
and so we can turn that into a chat bot that so now a customer can just be like, hey, ask whatever questions you want at 1 a.m, right? And whenever,
and it'll answer you.
Yeah. And you'll get access to 12 different sets of DSCR guidelines and figure out which program is the best one for your particular situation. So it's it's phenomenal. It's really brilliant. Cool.
Yeah. It's exciting where this stuff is going.
The GPTs are I know that the criticism is that they hallucinate in general queries, and that's they're not good enough, because look at this silly thing, and you point to this silly answer that it gave. But I think that when you are training it on a specific set of data, the hallucination percentage goes down materially because it doesn't have the wrong answers out in the world to get confused. You know what I mean? To add to the weightings, right? If I'm just read these 400 pages and this is all you're going to work off of is these 400 pages.
Correct.
Then it should get it wrong a lot less. And I think that those specific guidelines, scenarios, or training manuals, David, you were talking about the training manuals and turning how you went from this perspective or this approach rather of having a 1-page training manual, and now you're really building them out to be much more robust. Yeah. I think that's the stuff, man. The people who have tight, detailed SOPs, that they can then give to their GPT, and then now the GPT knows how you
What to
want
do.
it done and the if-then statements to like route the data different directions based off of what happens. That's going to be the source material that the GPTs are going to like really add fuel from an efficiency point of view to operating platforms.
So I'm always fascinated by guys who have ridden through a couple of cycles. You know, we talk to investors every day here, at least I do, that, you know, they've got 5, 6 houses. They've really just been riding the wave up. And, or, you know, we all know syndicators who are just really betting on appreciation for their model. But when you talk briefly at the very beginning about how, you know, you got hit pretty hard in the downturn, and I just love a good story, and I love the comeback story, you know. And so I was just saying to Jack when we took a quick break that you know, if you'd held a gun to my head right now and said, "Hey, I've got this flip for you," I would still have PTSD over what I went through in that 2000 sort of 10, 11, 12. And frankly, you know, I was reluctant to get back on the horse, and so I went off in coaching directions and things like that. And so the fact that you've been able to really pick it back up and really do better than ever, it sounds like, I think is fascinating. So maybe you could share that with the listeners on what you went through and what it was like to sort of make the comeback.
Yeah. So, you know, when someone gets back up, you know, after, you know, like there's a certain degree of stubbornness that is required.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're really, but what it boils down to is just, you know, just not allowing that part of your brain, you know, the back part of your brain to, you know, to operate you. You know, you really have to look at it logically, learn from the mistakes that you made. And, you know, for me, I guess I was a little lucky in that it was much easier in my situation. Like I was in a market, most of my properties were in markets that lost like 90% of their value,
Yeah.
85, 90% of their value.
Right.
So I was looking at it going, okay, that's stupid. I mean, the first property I bought, you know, post downturn or, you know, on the way out of the downturn
Mm-hmm.
was a house I bought from Bank of America for $1,500 that they gave me a $3,000 commission as the buyer's agent for buying. I literally got a house and some cash. So there are some, okay, that's stupid. Like it's, you know, I should stay in this. Like there's opportunity here. Like it doesn't matter that I screwed up, but I also had a lot of good, strong mentors who were sitting here going, you know, look, Dave, I lost money with you, but I know you came out a lot worse than I did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not better. And you learned, you'll figure it out. And, you know, for the last 15 years, we've been fishing with dynamite. You know, it's super, super easy. Every mistake we thought we made turned out to be, it turned out to be a winner. There were a few that I thought were winners that wound up being losers. But everything that I was teetering on, you know, every little rental that was like in my strike zone, it was fairly, it turned out okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, like, advice to people who are falling flat on their face, it's like, you know, just be luckier, you know, just be luckier.
Keep putting the uniform on every day. Shit works out.
I have a
Jack, in 2012, could you ever have predicted the run up that we would see between 2012 to say like 2019? Were you and Fred talking about that? I mean,
no, we didn't, right? Because we sold stuff, right? And that was everything we sold was a huge mistake. And we sold every year we sold stuff. So like that was all a mistake. And we bought in lower end locations than we should have, right? We should have been operating in higher end locations because there was materially more money. There's been much more money made over the past 15 years in home price appreciation than cash flow, wherever you were, right?
Sure.
home price appreciation has been the vast majority of the return in every look back IRR. And so we sold we went to Atlanta in 2011 and bought like 700 houses over the course of 3.5 years, and we were selling turnkey rentals the whole way through because we just didn't have enough cash to keep everything. So that was out of necessity, but we ended up tucking away 200 houses with like basically hard money, and ended up selling them in 2015 at what the time was a great cap rate. Like we sold them at like a 6 cap at the time, which was like, we thought a great deal. It was like you could borrow money at 6.75, or we could sell the houses at 6. And we were like, well, I guess we're selling the houses at 6. And we thought we were, we pat ourselves on the back for selling high, and then rents doubled. And, I didn't see that coming, had no idea. And we left so much money on the table. Oh, I got a funny story for you. So there was one property that we kept
in Atlanta.
In Atlanta. Because when we went to sell it, I had bought it stupidly at the courthouse steps. I had bought it and there was a rental restriction, and you couldn't rent properties in that condo. It was technically a condo, but it's all townhouses. And there was a rental restriction against it. And we leased it back to the existing homeowner who was there. And that was a great result, right? He didn't have to leave his house. He'd had a one-time set of medical expenses that caused him to lose his house, and he wanted to stay there. And so we collected $900 a month rent for the past 15 years.
Shout out to Danny Catan, sell to rent.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah, right? Exactly right. So that works. Yeah. So I got a tremendous tenancy duration out of it, and we sold that portfolio 9 years ago. And it's the one that we kept because it was the old owner. There was never any maintenance calls, and we didn't want to disturb the situation. And the condo association was probably just looking the other way because it was the old owner, right? No one wants to kick that guy out, even if he's technically renting. So anyway, I think he passed away recently. And so we turned over the property, and we're like, well, we have to sell it because there's a rental restriction, so we can't put a for rent sign up. And we went back and looked at the numbers. I bought that house for $27,000 in 2013, 2012, doesn't matter. And we're selling it for $250,000.
Just be luckier.
It's ridiculous.
Just be lucky. That's awesome.
And had it been, and probably the allocated purchase price in the 2015 portfolio sale was probably like 115. And that was amazing, right? Like, oh my God, we probably put like 10 grand into it or whatever, but like you tripled your money on these houses, and we were like, this is amazing. But then we could have, more than doubled it again had we just not sold. And wow. No one. So to David's point, like, everyone's been very fortunate the past 15 years. Mm-hmm. And maybe the market continues to go up and to the right, but I think operationally it's going to be harder on a going forward basis than it has been.
I think everybody looks like a brain surgeon when appreciation is rising rapidly.
But we talked about Open Door, and we've gone kind of back and forth on what we think is going to happen in the long term ultimately with that company. But I like to keep things very basic when I buy, because I think housing is primarily a function of how many people need the housing and how many housing units are there available. I mean, it is a supply demand before you get into interest rates, before you get into employment, before you get into any other factors. So I look at a company like Open Door who can buy in, obviously in multiples of what I can buy in. And I look at it like, if they're not stupid, which no idea if they're stupid or not, but if they're not stupid, they should win when market times increase, right? That's really, if supply and demand are even, like if assuming you have enough supply and enough demand, assuming they're in equilibrium, if market times increase, then you are the fast buck, and you will be able to acquire right. You'll be able to buy right. And I don't think it's a function of interest rates for me. Like I'm buying right now, not because I think the market is going to appreciate like it has over the last 10 or 15 years, but because I think I can buy at a bigger discount right now, because people who are in distress can't just put their house on the market and get 4 offers in 2 hours. Like the market is moving slower. Market times are increasing, even if prices aren't going down. So that's why I'm buying, and I think that the luck factor. And I say be luckier, and I mean like if you're doing everything right, and things aren't, and you're failing, like no one's doing everything right, but you learn from your mistakes and you stay humble, and you be willing to accept that you're not always right, and that allow you to look back and see where you screwed up. But then it's just, you do things as precisely and as well as you can, and then there's an element of chance to it that's really going to ultimately overshadow any of your great decisions or bad decisions, because you can't predict the future.
I do. We will have that conversation sometimes in both the real estate and the lending side of things. Like, well, what if such and such happens, and what's the doomsday scenario that has to happen in order for like us to get wiped out, for example, right? And I always have this retort that I'm like, if that happens, 95% of the market is worse off than we are, then we'll be fine, because the tail will be wagging the dog, right? Like no one's foreclosing on the top 5% of operators. They're dealing with the bottom 95 who are an absolute shit show and represent far greater losses than us. Everything's relative in capitalism, right? Like money is relative and operations are relative. And so no one will be like dropping the hammer on us, because we'll be the best, as long as we're the best performing in the lot. You just need to be better than everybody else, right? Just need to be faster than your friend when the bear is chasing you. And I think that's the practical reality of it. Like you don't need to worry about absolute results. You have to worry about your results relative to how the rest of the market, relative to your peers at any given time.
Well, and more importantly, you have to gear yourself up, because when that happens, that's an opportunity that's going to favor the bold and the experienced. It's a funny story from the downturn is Chrysler's headquarters in Auburn Hills. The debt on the building in I don't remember, it must have been 2009, right around there. The debt on the building was going for 2 cents on the dollar. And my property management company couldn't afford to pay me. So I literally had a job with my uncle's brother, like uncle through marriage, his brother. And he was putting together a group to buy the debt. They had renegotiated, they had a relationship with this bank already, with the debt holder already. And they negotiated a deal to buy it at 2 cents on the dollar. And then it must have been several months later, and they were paid off 100 cents on the dollar. What? So, and it was on obviously the Chrysler headquarters, like a big dollar amount. They made a ton of money. So it's like, when those opportunities happen, you have to be bold, but you're going to get those opportunities because you're experienced. Those opportunities will come to your doorstep because, so you're not just the 5% operator who your lenders aren't going to come knock on your door for their money back. It's that your lender's going to knock on your door and say, right, I'll give you favorable terms on your debt. You help me out with this.
Yeah. So. It's a very not sexy approach to the business, but it's definitely the one that we take. Is like, just focus on operations. Everything else will probably, don't do anything like too crazy. Focus operations, and it'll take care of itself. We won't get hurt when it's bad, and coming out of the bad, we'll get a bunch of opportunities because we're good operators. And it's not sexy, right? It's a not sexy approach that, we missed out on the past 15 years. Did I maximize the past 15 years of up and to the right? Absolutely not. Like in no businesses were we the best performing business, right? We were always a little more. We were never the most aggressive when you got paid to be aggressive, right? When you got paid to be aggressive the past 15 years, we were never the most aggressive one. So lots of folks have been like brighter shining stars, but we just, we do really solid returns on equity and just keep building the machine. And it's nothing sexy about it, but like, I don't know, but that's our MO. That's our style, I guess,
Yeah, and that's why when the shit hits the fan, so to speak, you're okay because your approach is not balls to the wall, mortgage the, mortgage the blue oval. I always say that because that's what kind of Ford did. They came out like way ahead. They didn't have to take money from the government because they literally, like before the downturn, they had literally borrowed against the
goodwill of
the brand, like literally the brand. Like if they had lost the Ford like oval with it wouldn't have been theirs anymore.
That's funny. It's wild. Yeah.
So
that's true leverage. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look, they came out ahead, but that turned out to be a smart thing to do at the time, right? It was but like you said, Jack, it's just outlast, right? Just be in a strong position relative to your competitors, relative to your peers, and opportunities will come your way.
So switching gears, what are you doing on the acquisition side right now? We talked about this a little bit last week, and I was super intrigued. It sounded like a redesign.
Yeah, so we essentially inherited a We Buy Houses company. It's not like the franchise We Buy House, but it was basically a company built on a system. Tiff and Josh High in Columbus. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
This company was like kind of operating this system. The owner of the company had a sickness in the family, and he had to step away. And so he basically just said, "You guys take care of my people." So we kind of inherited it, and we've been tinkering with it. From a tech standpoint, these kids know how to sell, they know how to buy, they know how to make deals happen. So it's just feeding them leads, tracking everything that we possibly can track, getting the best data, implementing automations, and we're buying. We're contracting. We contracted 7 last week. It was a really good week.
Great week.
Before that,
Hell yeah.
Yeah, the week before that I think it was like 6. But we're generally 3, right around 3 a week that we're putting under contract, and we're taking down 1 and wholesaling the rest of them. We'd like to take all the deals that we have the capital to take the deals we want to take. We don't have we have the debt, we have the equity, we don't have the trade base, to manage all those, especially the ones that are heavy turns. So that's a lot of what we're wholesaling out. But but our feeling is look for distress, and just get deals done.
So we were talking before we press record on your lead gen and what you're using for that, and it sounds like you're making a bit of a shift. So what were you doing for lead gen, and what are you doing now?
So we are to some degree still doing cold calls and texts from Audantic and another predictive list, and other public record data like pre-foreclosure, probate, things like that.
In-house or VAing that for the cold call?
The cold call is all VAs, and the texting is all VAs as well.
Mm-hmm.
They just kick a lead, and our our buyers jump on it. We want to get out of that, mostly from a defensive standpoint. We don't want our name, smeared on the internet for being, being a
spammer,
cold caller or
right.
whatever. Yeah. So we eventually want to just get out of that. There's some exposure in terms of fines and things like that. We just, we want inbound leads. They're also just better leads and a better use of our people's time. So we got PPC running. We're running about 20, 25K a month spend on PPC. And then we're also now looking to PPL providers. So PPL is pay per lead. And so we've identified 5 of them, and I think we'll our strategy is going to be buy leads from all of the PPL providers. Like if you provide leads in our system and we can verify that you are not reselling those leads to other people, which is pretty easy to reverse engineer, we buy from all of them, and that way you can tinker with what we're paying in a particular county at a particular time, to just take advantage of, okay, who's willing to give us these leads at the least price, and be able to kind of develop over time what our close rate is from each provider, and use that to kind of turn the knobs and pull the levers to get, to get the cheapest lead cost. And then we're looking to start a heavier direct mail campaign. Right now it's just strategic direct mail to particular people, and pretty soon it's going to be direct mailing the predictive lists.
How do you get comfortable? I mean, I've always struggled a little bit just from a trust point of view with the pay per lead providers. Like you mentioned that you can confirm that you can verify somehow that they're not selling that lead to multiple people. How do you do that?
Well, so we do ask, like we do postmortem whenever we don't get a deal. We also reverse look into our market to see who did they sell to, and we can, use that to kind of say, okay, this PPL provider is, we're closing at a 1 out of 7 rate. This other one's 1 out of 20. And then you start to see deals that you were fed by them, selling at a higher rate to your competitors in the market, and you can start to kind of recognize that's likely what's happening. But we also know and interact with a lot of the wholesalers in our area. We host a meetup. We bring them all to our office. We talk about deals. We try to make it so that we, JV on deals where possible. We can plug in some of our resources in the property management space, or in the inspection space, or in the financing space, to just make it worth their while to keep an open line of communication with us. And then, we can see, okay, they post a deal that they get, or they talk to us about a deal that they get where we got that lead, and we just ask them, where'd you get the lead from? And if it's the same provider, that's a problem.
Right.
Where I don't know that, you have like multiple PPL providers where it's really the same one, there might be some issues there, but, so far we've been, we've only been doing it, the PPL part, for a few weeks. We were really anal retentive about what happened when the lead came in. Like, lead comes in, we wanted to make sure, every field was, input a certain way. We want to make sure that we're notifying everybody who needs to know that lead came in, making sure that it's tracked all the way to close. But once we got that, we started doing it a few weeks ago, and a lot of leads. We're getting, 3 to 4 leads a day. That's really now kind of dominating the deals we're locking up. I think that those PPL providers that do a really good job, you're actually going to get a higher hit rate with them than you will your own PPC, because they're really freaking good at it. They not only are out there with PPC, they're not only out there with Facebook ads and YouTube ads, but they're retargeting, right? They're doing a very good job of retargeting. And the reason why I like retargeting leads who are PPC or whatever, is that you've taken a situation where somebody goes and Googles, I want to sell my house quickly, and they see you and your 4 biggest competitors, 5 biggest competitors, whatever it is. And so they're clicking on you, but they're clicking on a bunch of other people, and they're just shopping for the best price. At some point, if a deal didn't get made, they forgot about it, their situation improved, and then it got bad again, they're retargeting. When they see that YouTube ad, when they see that banner ad, when they see that whatever it is, now they're clicking, and they're a captive audience. They're not going out there looking for people. It popped up.
You found them.
Now, yeah. And now your hit rate goes up.
Yeah.
I don't want to ask you your proprietary provider there, Jack. Have you looked into PPL here in Baltimore?
Yeah, I I have a trust issue with the reselling thing, so I'm going to talk to David more about it, but I haven't
Who
done
would
it.
be, are these like nationwide providers, Jack, or is this like more local,
I
regional?
don't know.
You haven't looked
I
at
mean,
any,
there are, well, I don't know if anyone's truly nationwide, right? Because you probably can't do it well
yeah, I would think.
nationwide. They probably like major metros. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really where their advantage, where the PPL really make money, where the providers make money is that they're advertising nationally, right? So it's much cheaper for them to generate a lead than it is for us targeting in a specific market. But Jack, I wouldn't really worry so much about the reselling thing anyway. If they're out there reselling it to wholesalers, you're a buyer, you have cash, you have good,
Better knowledge of the
Yeah, we'll
market.
be competitive.
practices.
Yeah.
What I would look at is just like, this is a PPL provider. I'm able to close 1 out of X with them. It's profitable. It's not profitable.
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care why. I mean, I want to know because the defensive part of me like wants to know, and it just irks me to know that I'm, buying something that they're selling to another person for the same. But at the end of the day, it's just all about close rate.
What's your cost per lead on that type of lead?
So I can't, with only doing the PPLs for a few weeks, I can't give you accurate data on that.
Customer. Yeah.
But because I think it's, I can tell you the cycle is fairly short, just like PPC. It's about a 30-day cycle. So we'll probably know in a couple of months with reasonable accuracy what our cost per acquisition. Our average cost per lead is about 150, 175, but that's just probably more my market than it is, people from like Arizona are probably paying like 550 or, from the same provider.
Sure.
So it's all county based. I'm offline. I'm happy to, share all of our providers and then, kind of what we do.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, it's anything and everything to get acquisitions. Talking to other wholesalers, we use Privy to to mine stuff that's on the market. We use Investor Lift to find deals and go dig in and say, okay, this wholesaler has it. A lot of Investor Lift has a lot of inexperienced people posting deals, and I think there's a way to when you have experience and you can gain a rapport and a level of trust with that wholesaler, you can call them about deals you want and you can make it work because either they have it at the wrong price and they have to retrade it and they can get that done, or they have it at the right price and they're just asking for too much and you just get to the number that makes sense. And if you're the easy button and they trust you, they're wholesalers by and large.
Just taking an order at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, it's super interesting. I thought that was a great point. Yeah. Cool. Well, hey, David, really appreciate your time today, man. We've taken up a lot of it.
Yeah, we did.
Thanks for hanging out and chatting. We just, love digging in, and you're a great operator. It's been my pleasure to hang out with you at RIR, and really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the podcast today.
If you guys ever want to come out to Detroit and
Dude, it is one of my great regrets in my career that in 2008, 9, 10, 11, I never came up to Detroit and to see the $1,500 house that was being sold where you could get a commission on it and walk away from the table with money. Like that must have been just, I'm sure it was treacherous, but I bet it was so fun for a number of years there. Like
it was a lot of fun. We would go to tax sales and we'd bring, at one tax sale we bought 23 properties. I think we spent I think we spent $400,000 something like that, three or $400,000. And that portfolio, we still have most of that portfolio. It's probably worth probably $3.5-4 million now.
Yeah, and nice stuff too. Like it's like They're really nice areas.
I looked at some of your properties, man. The Detroit metro area, is no different than the Baltimore metro area. They're just great single family, venerable old neighborhoods that people still want to live in. It's fantastic stuff.
Yeah, and they, but if you ever want to come out, I mean, there's still, it's so funny because you can still see you can still drive to areas where you'll see like 2 blocks where there's like 2 houses. The rest of the houses were were just torn down. And you can see there's still kind of remnants of the, I think they called it ruin porn back in the day. Like people would literally come out and they would, look at this abandoned building. Like, and it was, there's a great episode on the Silverdome, which used to be, you can find it on the internet, just looking at people walking through how that building had dilapidated over whatever it was, when they built Ford Field over 15 years, 10 years, whatever it was. So there's still some of that there, but then you can see areas that are just, that's what I love. Real estate moves slowly. Like you can see where it's going very easily.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so it's, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. I hope everybody enjoyed Super Deep Dive today with you. As always, you can reach Jack or I. I'm at Craig at thedominiongroup.com. Jack can be reached at Jack at thedominiongroup.com. We love your comments. We thank everybody for taking a listen. Got so many more great episodes coming up over the next few months. We've got some great guests just like David and more. So keep tuning in. This is Real Investor Radio. We'll see you the next time.